Anytime. Okay.
Historian.
The Brentwood Baptist Church, Reverend Ratner, is going to the church trip is
I have to look for myself. Good evening and welcome to the October Committee of the Whole meeting. The Board of Trustees of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in the Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, October 6, 2016, in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas, at 6 p.m., for the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, October 10, 2016 school board agenda designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve any concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 to 551.084 inclusive of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV, Channel 16, and CFTV Online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully request that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that all cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. We do have some Community Leadership Committee members here with us tonight. I see Tom Pickford. Do we have anyone else from the... Oh, I'm sorry, and I don't... Allison James and Julie Heineman. Very good. Thank you guys for raising your hands. So, the first thing we're going to do is hear some reports. We have a report item that we'll hear on human resources on Monday. But tonight we're going to have a report on the 2016-17 board monitoring system, and I believe Teresa Hull is our presenter.
I'm going to start the presentation and then turn it over to each one of the associates to present the individual goals. But Board, as you recall, in 2014, you approved the board monitoring system, which is the process that you use to monitor the district's progress toward achieving the district's goals. As a part of this system, the process used to measure and communicate the district's progress is for the administration, along with board input, to identify key target objectives aligned with each goal and to provide systemic and timely information on each objective. As you know, the information provided through the board monitoring system is a key element in the strategic planning and continuous improvement of the district, and is also a key focus in the development of the district improvement plan and the campus improvement plans. This evening, we would like to provide you with a brief review of the established target objectives and afford you the opportunity to provide input or feedback on the individual targets and determine if you would like some adjustments and changes to that. And we're going to begin the presentation with Dr. Macias on Goal 1.
Are we going to have the slides up there or not? Okay.
I think Joel.
Good evening. Goal 1 focuses on academic achievement. With this goal, the district ensures academic performance and achievement levels that reflect excellence in learning, as well as attainment and high expectations and high standards for all of our students. There is a slide, Teresa?
Well, I think they're looking for it. Just go ahead and keep going.
Okay. In a minute, you'll see the slide with the 6 objectives for Goal 1. You'll also see the targets for each objective, the evidence we will use to determine the progress, and the timeline for reporting the information to you. I'll share with you that establishing targets for some of the objectives, specifically objectives 1, 2, 3, is a bit challenging because the testing standards continue to increase every year. Objective 1 focuses on achieving or exceeding state accountability standards. You will note that our target is for all of our campuses to achieve the MET standard rating. Objective 2 focuses on increasing the overall performance on STAR 3 to 8 and end of course exams. Objective 3 focuses on closing the achievement gap by increasing performance in our economically disadvantaged group on STAR 3 to 8 and end of course exams. You will note on the chart that the evidence of progress for these first 3 objectives is either accountability reports from the Texas Education Agency or performance data from our state testing vendor. Additionally, we look at the impact of some of our initiatives such as Camp Summit and Algebra Camp. The timeline for reporting the first 3 objectives is September with the district accountability report, which you may recall we provided this past month. Excuse me. Objective 4 focuses on increasing the graduation rates in all student groups, and evidence of progress is TEA's 4-year longitudinal summary report. Objective 5 focuses on increasing the number of industry certifications. And for this objective, we use our own internal calculations to determine progress in this area. And Objective 6 focuses on increasing the number of students participating and earning credit in advanced courses in the economically disadvantaged group. The evidence of progress for this objective is the TAPER report, or the Texas Academic Performance Report. The last 3 objectives will be reported to you in January during our TAPER hearing, or our Texas Academic Performance Report hearing. So I'll now turn it over to Dr. Stewart, who will continue with Goal 2.
Thank you. Goal 2. Sharita asked me not to wear these glasses, but this is all that I have right now, so sorry, Sharita. Goal 2, safe and healthy environment. The goal is that the district will provide a safe, disciplined, and healthy environment conducive to student learning. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about goals 2 and 3. And overall, we support efforts to increase student academic achievement. So goal 3 is human capital, goal 2 is safe and healthy environment, but it all rolls into support the goal 1 to make sure that students are successful in the classroom. We have 2 objectives in goal 2, and it is to increase the number of students receiving face-to-face instruction by decreasing the overall number of student discipline referrals. We want you to know that in that goal, To reduce the number of student referrals, we know that we have to support efforts to increase classroom management strategies. We have to implement, or we want to implement a research-based method to improve student behavior. And we're hoping to work with curriculum to target those students who are failing and really focus on the amount of face-to-face instruction that they receive. So we're going to start with looking at overall students, but we want to focus on those students that are not being successful and how do we ensure that they're receiving more face-to-face instruction. Our target for that is to decrease the number of discipline referrals. But decreasing those referrals means students will hopefully, our goal is that they are behaving appropriately in class, that we have methods to address misbehavior, and that 5% is not just don't refer students, but that you have a change in behavior and you're supporting classroom management. The evidence that we'll share with you is that we'll use campus-specific discipline data, and that data is driven from Cognos, OnData Suite, and in-school, eSchool Plus. And at some point, we want to be able to bring to you information regarding student academics, along with increased face-to-face instruction, so that we can show the correlation that if those students who are failing have more class time, then those scores will improve. And it's not just that you misbehaved and we were not going to send you out, but that whole behavior has changed. We'll bring you discipline data to support our efforts this fall and again in the spring. Our second goal is to implement or expand implementation of positive behavior interventions and support, the PBIS programs in all of our campuses. So our goal each year is to, well, for this coming year, is to have 90% of our campuses that implement PBIS. Once again, implementing a research-based discipline management program such as PBIS, it supports the objective in number one. So when you have a district-wide or a school-wide effort on appropriate behavior, that helps in the classroom, keeps kids in class more often, and helps us with that overall goal to increase face-to-face instruction for all students. We will bring that data to you at the same time this fall and again in the spring. Goal 3, human capital. The district will recruit, develop, and retain highly qualified and effective personnel reflective of our student demographics. The district will identify and invest in the continuous development of leaders who will inspire and support others to improve student achievement. And so we have 3 different objectives there. Our first objective, and we work closely with Roy Garcia and school leadership. And so Roy, feel free to comment at any point. Our goal is to implement a recruitment plan that focuses on recruiting a diverse leadership staff reflective of district student demographics. When we bring you the report, we'll be able to share with you a breakdown of applicants and hires for the leadership team, which is our campus principals, our executive team, which is the cabinet, along with other professionals, directors, assistant directors, DIs, and then we have that information drilled down to teachers. So we'll be able to compare all of our hires with the student demographics and see how we measure up. We know that we are not just looking for diverse and by ethnicity, but when we say diverse, we want diverse in thought, diverse in culture. So it's more than selecting people by ethnicity. We always want to hire qualified applicants. And we'll bring you that information at the end of the year. We'll give you an annual report. We work closely with Stuart Snow on Objective 2 to provide a competitive compensation package for all employees. And so when we work with the finance department, we supply the data that shares the market value of employees, competitive rates in and out of the state of Texas, and then that department works with the superintendent and the cabinet to make sure that our compensation packages are competitive. And we'll bring that information to you at the end of the year also. Our last objective for Goal 2 is to research, develop, and implement a plan to improve teacher attendance. And again, we have worked with the entire cabinet, but specifically Stuart Snow and his team. And we brought to you in June the proposal, or you approved to do the teacher incentive, where we are compensating, or we have a program designed to compensate teachers for improved attendance. And that completes Goal 3. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Goal 4, Communication and Community Relations, Teresa Hull.
You received a copy of this comprehensive plan when we provided the communications number of parents that are taking advantage of that system. And Goal 5, I'll turn it over to Mr. Snow.
Thank you, Teresa. Goal 5, we have one overriding goal under Goal 5, and that is in financial management. The goal states the district will exercise fiscal responsibility to maintain financial strength and provide the financial resources for the educational program and support needs. That goal is, the achievement of that goal is evidenced by 4 separate objectives. The first objective is to develop and manage an operating budget that reflects the objectives of the district's improvement plan. The target of which is to develop a budget in which the budgeted revenues equal budgeted expenditures, in other words, a balanced budget. There are a number of benchmarks that we look to in order to achieve that target goal. Of course, as you know, we begin the budget process in January of each year, and so throughout that process and the budget deliberations from January, with the ultimate objective of having you all adopt a budget by the end of the fiscal year, or by the end of June. And so you can see with the dates there that of the various timelines for reporting and the number of benchmarks that we would achieve that. That objective, as you know, has been met as you adopted a balanced budget on June 27, 2016 for the 2016-2017 fiscal school year. Objective number 2 is to maintain an appropriate fund balance. And our target objective there is to maintain a general fund balance of at least 14% of operating expenditures. And of course, the benchmarks, the evidence of progress begins with the adoption of the budget for the 2016-17 fiscal year, and then continues throughout the course of the fiscal year as we monitor that budget and work with the rest of the staff in terms of being able to complete that work. At the end of the fiscal year, then we work with the independent auditors as they come in and do the independent audit of the district's financial statements, and then ultimately preparing a comprehensive annual financial report of the district's finances. And so that independent audit has been completed. We are in the process now of preparing that CAFR, and in November, next month, we will present that CAFR to you and ask that you approve that. But that CAFR will disclose that our operating fund balance will be 48.6% of annual operating expenditures for 2015-16 fiscal year. So that objective has been met also. Objective 3 and Objective 4 really go hand in hand because it relates to the sale of bonds in order to finance and fund our construction renovation of facilities and other capital improvement projects such as technology and buses and that sort of thing. And so, as you know, we are in the process of working on a bond sale that we will actually go to market next week. We are anticipating pricing that bond on the 13th next week, in accordance with the parameter bond order that you have approved back in September. In the first phase of that bond sale is to make presentations to the bond rating agencies, we call ratings calls. And we did make a ratings call with Standard & Poor's on Monday, September 26th, and with Moody's on Tuesday, September 27th. And so the target objective there is to maintain our underlying bond rating with Moody's of AA1, our Standard & Poor's underlying rating of AA, and our Fitch rating of AA as well. We had communicated with Fitch a month or so ago, and they had affirmed our AA rating. We learned earlier this week that Moody's and Standard & Poor's also affirmed our underlying ratings of AA1 and AA respectively. The ratings calls essentially is a presentation to them of our budget practices, our local economy, how that's doing, enrollment projections, the long-term plan for our capital improvement projects, taxable property values, and financial operations and results. And as I mentioned, the timeline for reporting then would be this month, and as you know, or as I just mentioned, we are planning to go into the market next week on the 13th. And then objective number 4 is to actually sell those bonds and close on that transaction. And so that objective is to provide the funding for facilities, technology, and program needs by selling those bonds. The bond sale that we're working on right now totals about $550 million, $270 million of which is for new money for bond projects under the 2007 and 2014 bond authorization, as well as refunding $260 million of outstanding bonds that we hope to sell about $200 million in order to refund $260 million there. So again, a lot of procedures, I guess, in order to go through that process, preparing and reviewing various drafts of the preliminary official statement, the ratings call with the agencies, due diligence calls with all of the underwriters and the underwriters' lawyers, and then receiving the bond ratings. And so the ultimate achievement of that objective then would be at the time of closing of that transaction, which would be in November, mid-November. So with that, I'll turn it over to Roy Sprague for Goal 6.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Goal 6 is operations management. The district will ensure that the facilities adequately support the educational program and other operations for the district. We have 5 objectives that we've established for this goal. The first one is related to facilities planning and construction, and our team would like to go ahead and formalize a project lessons learned process so we can better document design and construction issues that we encounter on our projects for increased quality control on all our future projects. And our goal there is to basically reduce the number of changes we experience on our projects, which ultimately results in a reduction in our construction costs. And we'll just use the historical data we currently have and continue to monitor our projects accordingly, and hopefully we will see a reduction in those and an increased quality control and projects being completed within allowance monies that we have allocated. And we look at doing that on an annual basis. Our maintenance department wants to try to work on improving our communications with our campuses, as we call them, our clients, and on the time frame of completing work orders and building modifications. And we want to be more transparent. So what we're working on is with our work order system, which is called School Dude, and trying to make some of that information more readily available for the campuses so we can be more transparent so they can see the work order and where it is in progress, whether we're ordering parts or it's in the process of it's going to be a 2 or 3 day item to complete. And the same thing with building modifications. because a lot of times on building mods, we have to go estimate, we have to evaluate the request, estimate it. In some cases, it requires us to design something and then get an estimate and report back to the campus to see if this is within their budgets to work with to do that. And then we'll utilize reporting mechanisms that we have within the School Dude software to review and analyze and see the progress that we're making, and we propose to do that on an annual basis. Our purchasing department is currently looking at implementing 21st century learning furniture and environments, and we established a vision to do that so that we can improve the quality of learning by the use of the furniture and providing flexibility within those learning spaces. We've actually implemented that at Cypress Park High School, as well as a couple other schools. Francone, Leader, and Hancock also received new furniture, and we provided more flexible type furniture to give the teachers a lot of opportunities to work with the students in different formats for project-based learning and things like that. And our goal is to continue our master plan to implement that on an annual basis as we coordinate renovation projects throughout the district. And obviously the measure would be the completion of the replacement of those at the designated campuses, and which would typically occur in the fall semester when we complete renovation projects. Our transportation department, we really would like to try to work on increasing the transportation department's on-time performance with our buses. And our goal there is to try to increase that time arrival to an average of 90% at our campuses. Currently, we've been working with the campuses to standardize and implement a standardized loading and unloading procedure to help us streamline the loading and unloading of buses in the morning and the afternoon operations. And we're also working with the campuses to try to improve upon those procedures. So, and in some cases, it involves making some route adjustments, especially when we have construction activities in the general area that does impact whether we can get to a campus on time or not in delivering students. We're also going to be utilizing the GPS data from the GPS systems that have been installed on all our buses and evaluate what that data is showing as the measurable, so we can see if we're actually hitting our target of 90% or greater. And we plan on doing that both in the fall and the spring semesters to continue that evaluation. And last but not least is our food service and operations department. One of the things we want to do is reduce the waste and dumpster expense from use of the styrofoam trays in the cafeteria by installing additional Styro Genie units. We've actually installed a pilot program at Copeland Elementary School, and we're going to currently monitor how that's going to be reducing the waste products that come from our food service operations. And our goal is to try to reduce that volume by 30%. And we'll verify those volumes before we go invest in more units. But if we're hitting that target goal, then our goal is to purchase additional units and start putting those at additional campuses so we can continue to work towards reducing the environmental waste. And we'll be doing then again on the basis of our fall and spring semesters. So with that, that includes Goal 6, and we will all be happy to answer any questions or receive any feedback to each of these goals.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that detail, and I know everyone on the board does. Do we have any questions, starting at this end? Mr. Jackson, you have any questions?
First, I'd like to say thank you for preparing the report as always. It's quite good. I appreciate the fact that the board several years ago moved in this direction, and certainly when we heard the Commissioner of Education speak, he lauded this as being among best practices for boards to pursue. A couple of questions. If we move down to goal number 6 on operations management, is IT covered in this area? Because clearly under number 1, facilities planning and construction, but also maintenance. So are we monitoring our IT rollout here, or is that really separate?
The IT is incorporated into the district improvement plan, not necessarily here in the board monitoring system, but that would be covered under the district improvement plan.
So when I take a look at goal 6, number 2, maintenance, we don't have work orders set up yet that relate to IT.
I believe the IT system, and Frankie Jackson could probably expand on this further. They already have a system in place that she could probably explain that deals with technology issues related to their equipment, that we as employees can turn in a request and have that item taken care of. We do work hand in hand with Frankie's team in terms of any equipment that we have furnished, such as HVAC equipment in our MDF and IDF rooms, and coordinate that through our work order system. So if there is an issue that she reports, we have our maintenance teams review, monitor, and fix and handle the situation with the systems that help serve the IT systems in our district.
The work order system is maintained and operated and served by essentially what our help desk is, and the employees that we have over there. And so, in fact, we are very proud that we have over a 95% completion rate on all of our work orders. So we're very proud of the work that they're doing over there.
On goal number 6, once again, on processing of work orders, for those that have been outstanding for years because bond money was used up, and so the final renovations were not done. Are we able to capture that information, or does those requests need to be resubmitted into the new system?
On bond items that may not have been included in the overall bond authorization, we do track those within our facilities department. So and we classify those as future considerations. And when we do the next bond study, we utilize that information and carry it forward, so we don't lose any item that's been turned in by a campus or an item that we identified by any department or the facilities department as being a need for the district, and include that. As it comes to work orders, we do monitor that work order system and our school dude system to see the status of work orders and try to improve upon our turnaround time on those items. And typically those are just maintaining the existing systems we have in place and doing repairs and preventive maintenance throughout the process. And occasionally the maintenance department will assist us on building modifications depending on the scope of the work that's requested by a campus. Sometimes the items in the bond are so small in nature, it's better to be handled as a building modification. And then we try to work with those specific projects and see if we can help the campus out to address their need.
On goal 3, item number 3, you did not reference it, but it would be interesting to know, and perhaps the program's too small for the ELC, as to whether or not that has any benefit in increasing staff attendance, because that is a service that we offer, granted it's on a fee basis. I don't know if we have any statistics on that or not. I do like on goal 3, number 1, the ongoing maturity of thought in this area, that the focus is on the concept of diversity as opposed to a specific identification and comparison just on ethnicity. And I would hope that as our thinking on this continues to mature, that perhaps we can also identify the research-based analysis that points us in this direction as being the right way to go. Right now, we're working off of anecdotal observations, which I support, and I support the concept of visibility that's been espoused by Dr. Ogletree. I think it's great. Serving on TASB and leadership TASB has reinforced my conviction. But these are all anecdotal observations. And as we mature in this area, it would be nice to be able to go back and see if there's any research out there that will support the process that we're undergoing. On goal number 4, I have to applaud the district. You know, I think you all continue to hit a home run. As a rookie trustee, I had the opportunity over several days to visit with Commissioner Mike Moses and Secretary Rod Page, and I observed, simply from business perspective, the 2 areas that needed that had the most opportunities. One was the broad concept of marketing, and the other was the benefit of IT. And I think the district is to be commended for making tremendous strides in the area of Goal 4. And of course, marketing is a very broad concept as well. I also have noticed that I think every year I've been a trustee that the Bob and Linda Show has gone around the state and around this country presenting, i.e. marketing, some of the best practices that our district has engaged in, and that certainly is part of the concept. As it relates to goal number 3, I also applaud Dr. Stewart's indication that we're going to be looking to try and tie correlation of academic achievement with a reduction in discipline referrals. I've always been somewhat worried about having an arbitrary goal of a reduction in discipline referrals, and this gives me greater assurance that we're doing so with a high level of maturity and a very focused intent in that area. And that covers it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Dr. Ogletree?
Thank you. I want to first start with Goal 1 on academic achievement, and specifically number 6, the increase the number of students enrolled in an earning credit in advanced courses in the economically disadvantaged student group. I believe the target, the increased by 1 point is too low. Bob, Don, and I attended a workshop doing TASB of a school district who has gone all out in getting economically disadvantaged and students, as well as the Hispanics and African American students in these advanced courses. And I would like to see our district to really go all out in trying to do that. I think too long these courses have been reserved for a special class of student. The presentation that we saw really talked about getting the students really engaged in the rigor of study and education, and how it prepares them for life after school, whether they go into a college or go into a trade. And so I would like for us to look at that. That 1 point, I believe, is really too low. So, and we said when we attended that workshop that we were going to present that to the district in some way, shape, or form. Next, on Goal 2, let's see. No, I want to go to Goal 3. Goal 3. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let's go to number 1. Increase the number of students receiving face-to-face instruction by decreasing the overall number of student discipline referrals. I think the 5% again is way too low of a target. I really believe that percentage should be 50%. That at least, if we really are going to make that a priority and go after a significant change in the practice that we are presently involved in removing the great percentage of African American and Hispanic students out of the classroom, 5% is just is too low. when you look at the percentage of students that we have enrolled in our district who are in, and then when you look at the percentage of discipline referrals and how drastically those numbers reflect a certain pattern. And Dr. Mark has said that should be the direction and course that this district should be on. And 5%, that is too low for any type of change. That is really woefully incremental. I mean, we should do better than that. I'd like for the two, and maybe in looking at that, if we look at a school or two that has demonstrated a great percentage of a decrease in discipline referrals, to have our team look at that and look at what those best practices and get that shared with the other schools in our district, that it can be done. And I think we need to set a high target for that, and because if we set a low target, it's really on the back burner. And we really need to do something with that. So I would suggest that.
Can I ask for clarification?
Yes.
Okay. So the target to change that from 5% to 50%, that's your recommendation. And then just on to reduce the number of discipline referrals, that when we bring you that data, not only will you see the number of discipline referrals, but we'll also share data with you regarding the removal of students from class, which might address the concern about the disproportionate placements of minority students in the DAEP, which is truly different than discipline referrals. So discipline referrals can, range from talking out to fighting. And so we're also going to look at removal, when those kids are removed from class, which was a result sometimes or sometimes not, based on the referral. So we'll bring you that data also. But just to clarify, 50% reduction in discipline referral is what you're recommending? Okay.
Yes. And thank you for clarifying the difference. But I really think in every area we need to set higher targets on that if that is really going to be a goal for our district.
Okay.
The other thing under human capital on goal 3, in under 1, I really do understand the language that you used, that diversity includes everything from what state you're from and whether you're introvert or extrovert. I understand all of that. I am concerned though, because would the district be satisfied if we had diversity in every area except ethnicity? And would we feel that we have satisfied our goal if our ethnic numbers remain the same? That doesn't reflect our student body. And would we say, well, hey, we've done it in every other area, so I'm concerned about that. And would you speak to that?
So let me just try to clarify that. Definitely the data that you'll receive will reflect the ethnicity. And so when we bring you that data, we'll be able to talk about, in those areas, leadership, executive leadership, professional staff, and teachers. When you compare that to the student demographics, we'll be able to talk about whether or not we're underrepresented, close to being represented, or definitely not represented where we would like. So when we look at our leadership, if I just, well, don't have the data in front of me, that when we look at the leadership in our Hispanic leadership, campus leadership, we are definitely underrepresented when we compare that to the student demographics. Overrepresented Anglo, and close to being the same for African American. So we will still bring you that data. I think what I was trying to say is not only do we look at that, but we definitely want to keep in mind that diversity is inclusive of lots of things. And also, I'm getting old and I lost my train of thought, but we will bring you that data looking at ethnicity in comparison to the student demographics.
Okay, I just don't want the district to use, for it to become an excuse.
Absolutely
That
not.
we have, while we're reaching all other diversity numbers. When I first got on the board, this issue was voiced by me every chance I could, and the retort was, "We just want the best. We just want the best." And saying we just want the best, and you never hired anyone that looks like me, said to me, I'm not included in the best. And I just want to make sure that as we broaden the look at diversity, that we don't end up saying, well, we've satisfied all our other numbers and, hey, we're doing well, but, you know, we don't want to focus on an ethnicity and have any ethnicity goals or targets.
Thank you for that. And it's noted.
Thank you, Dr. Ogletree. Ms. Blackshear?
I have a couple of questions for Ms. Stewart. You talked about in goal 2 about changing behaviors so that you have fewer discipline referrals. What is being done on the campuses to change behaviors that is working successfully?
I think that there are many things that are going on, and when I made that point that we want to make sure that we are looking at strategies and process that truly can support a change in the student's behavior. And when you look at positive behavior intervention, that strategy supports when students and teachers are doing the right things, and I said teachers because not just students, then you compliment them on those things. You encourage that correct behavior. So I would say overall that's where our strategies are focused on. When you look at our code of conduct, we used to, in the past, would have statements, don't stick your hand out of the window, don't do A, B, or C. The new verbiage is, we actually would tell students what we want you to do as opposed to what not to do. So we're trying to teach appropriate behavior as opposed to sharing, don't do this. We need you to sit in your seat quietly and not say, don't stand up. Okay. So that's overall how we're looking at behavioral, changing of behavior.
Okay. And then referring to goal 3, number 1 in our recruitment plan focused on diversity, is that plan, is it based on numbers district-wide as far as our diversity, or are we recruiting teachers to mirror the diversity at each campus?
And Sharita may have to help me on this. Well, when we look at district data, we have district data and we collect data district-wide overall. But we have shared that data and we will continue to share that data with individual campuses so that they can look at their campus and department. So the police department, they have their demographic breakdown. Campus will have their demographic breakdown, and we all know that our student population. So we collect data district-wide. We help them collect data by campus and by department. along with that we know that in HR, there are some other things that we need to do. We need to talk and have training on diversity. We need to talk about hiring strategies. And so we're going to support that with training for not only campuses but non-campus staff. But they receive that data district-wide, per department, and per campus.
Okay, because my hope would be that the diversity of our entire district be reflected at each campus and not just, you know, the student population at that particular campus.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Mr. Jackson?
I would, one observation, you know, if you take a look at the CIPs, and I read those every time I do a school visit, I can't recall ever seeing a CIP where we ever compared demographics of staff to student body. We always have the demographics in our CIPs for the student body. A request that I've made last year and the year before, and I'll suggest again, is that the metric that we are given for taking a look at Goal 3, number 1, is perhaps not the metric that is most meaningful. So if we had a metric, say, of the last 3 hiring classes, or if we were able to identify this type of metric with those broad characteristics that you're looking at, say by source school, our top 3 or 4 source schools. But clearly, since we want our teachers to stay with us for their career, looking at it at a snapshot is not particularly meaningful, but rather the delta or the change is that which might be more meaningful to us as a board in taking a look at this.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. We appreciate the report, and we look forward to seeing the presentations as they roll out on the calendar. It does give us a great deal of information. I know all of us appreciate the time that it takes to get this all on paper and give us a way to look at it throughout the whole year. So we appreciate that. We'll move on to our action items, starting with our consensus action items. 5A, the board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD. B, the board will consider approving the minutes of the September 12, 2016 regular meeting. Both of those are still on consensus. Does anyone want to change that, or does anyone have any questions on that? That will move us to our action items non-consensus, and we do have a brief report on our first item, which is A, the board will consider approving the 85th legislative session priorities developed by the Community Leadership Committee, the CLC, and we have both Ms. Hull and Mr. Pickford in this presentation. Who's going to start?
President Mongoya and Board of Trustees, this evening we would like to present and seek your approval of the 85th legislative session priorities. The recommended priorities have been developed by the Community Leadership Committee, or CLC. As you know, the CLC is comprised of approximately 40 individuals who represent various stakeholders in the community. The group includes representation by local business owners, clergy, Chamber of Commerce, retirees, parents of current and former CFISD students as well. These individuals are dedicated and hardworking community members who are committed to the students and parents and greater CFISD community. Community members lead the group. However, the district does provide support to the chair of the CLC, Mr. Tom Pickford, and the committee members. The purpose of the CLC is to endeavor to help protect the integrity of education of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District by understanding the current systems, mandates, and issues at the local, state, and federal level that impact the quality of our education system. We ask them to use their sphere of influence to share this information with residents and business communities, enabling them to become more knowledgeable and engaged. And the third goal of the committee is to ensure that elected officials are aware of the impact of the current systems and mandates on our quality of education and hold them accountable for future legislation and regulations. The administration does support the 85th legislative session priorities and recommends the board's approval of these. I'll now turn it over to the presentation to the CLC Community Chairperson, Mr. Tom Pickford. Mr. Tom Pickford is in his third year, I believe, as the chairperson of this committee. And, I do have to thank him publicly. He does not have children currently in our system. His children have graduated and moved on. In addition to that, he does have a paying job, but he commits a lot of time and effort, along with all the other members of the committee, to ensure that we have a voice in Austin and help protect public education in our district and in our state. So I thank you for that. So, Mr. Pickford?
Thank you, Teresa. And by the way, Teresa provides unbelievable support. And board members, Madam President, the other esteemed board members, thank you for having us here today. The staff is fantastic, the administrative staff, and they've been very supportive. And also our vice president, or vice chair, and secretary, Mr. Chuck Brandman, who works and has been working extremely hard over the last couple of weeks as he travels through Europe on his retirement vacation. So we do miss him. Chuck, I couldn't do what I do without Chuck and the other members. I have with me here today Allison James and Julie Hindman, and they're going to help me with this presentation. Just so that you know, the CLC, we kind of reorganize periodically, and this time, in order to not be totally overwhelmed with all the subject areas, we broke into 4 groups: school finance, assessment and accountability, school choice, transparency. And we have a leader of each one of those groups, and the leader of school finance is Alan Quintero. The leader of assessment and accountability is Allison. The leader of school choice is Julie, and transparency is Michael Murr. Alan could not be here today, but he may see you all, and probably will see you all on Monday. And Michael could not be here today. So I'm going to try and take their presentations. We have priorities in all 4 of those areas. And I will tell you, the importance, if you will, or of our priorities, the priority of the priorities, is really in this order. Number 1, priority, school finance. Number 2, assessment and accountability. Number 3, school choice. Number 4, transparency. They're all very important, but school finance is number 1. And we have 4 priorities within school finance that I would present to you. The first is to compel the legislature to comply with its own statutory mandate to calculate every biennium the funding level needed for the general diffusion of knowledge. The general diffusion of knowledge comes from the Constitution of the state of Texas. But by state statute, the legislature has said, hey, we need to figure out how much it costs to educate a kid in our public schools every 2 years. The problem is they haven't done it. And they haven't done it for a very long time, at least according to the Texas Supreme Court. Now, mind you, as you all are aware, the Texas Supreme Court did find the funding system by the state of Texas to be minimally constitutional, but constitutional nonetheless. We want to encourage our legislators to sit down and figure out how much does it cost per child to educate a kid properly in the state of Texas. We think if they do that, they're going to change their funding formulas. So let's get to number 2. Our second one is develop a system of funding for public schools that is systematically transformed to one that is simple and equal. We know in Cyfair Independent School District, it's not equal, okay? When in fact our neighboring, and I'm gonna call them suburban school districts, although that's changing too. We're almost all urban school districts. But we know when they are receiving hundreds of dollars more per student than Cyfair Independent School District, when there is no demographic difference of consequence, that's not equitable, and it's not fair. And we will continue to plead our case to the legislature and ask them to level the playing field for all the public school districts. Now, mind you, it's problematic because nobody understands school finance in the state of Texas, i.e., we need a simple and equitable system. This school district with Stuart Snow, it has one individual out of maybe a handful in the state of Texas that actually understands the current school finance system. And I think even occasionally he would throw up his arms and say, well, maybe it's this, maybe it's not. There's not, and we're blessed to have Stuart. But golly, everybody, every voter, every taxpayer in this school district should be able to understand at least the basics of school finance. And right now, under the current system, that's impossible. And so we would ask that that system be changed. The third point is to fund public education at a level that exceeds the minimum. This is Texas. All right? In Texas, we don't do things the minimum. We exceed and we excel. But right now, our state legislature is funding public schools at levels that are significant. Well, they, according to the Supreme Court, they are at the minimum, and they're just barely at the minimum. I took note that a data point, and I thought this was interesting. Since 2003, when you did an inflation adjustment on spending per student in Texas, since 2003, it's 2016 now, our state is funding our public schools $300 less than they did in 2003 when you adjust for inflation. 13 years later, and we're going backwards on funding public education, despite the fact that our state is growing leaps and bounds, and we have an economy that is almost second to none in the United States. But we're going backwards with the way we fund our schools. We need to properly fund public schools in the state of Texas, and we want to encourage our legislators to think big. Don't think small. Don't think minimum. Think big. Think about educating all Texas children. Our next priority in finance is to provide adequate funding for quality pre-K programs. The legislature came around last biennium and they provided a smidgen of funding for pre-K. Not nearly enough. At least we don't believe so. Pre-K, so far, the studies that I have been presented indicate that you get more bang for your buck with quality pre-K than almost anything. You close achievement gaps. You give kids a quality start to their life in school. And pre-K is important. We need more funding for pre-K from the state legislature. We need the state legislature to recognize the economic benefit of quality pre-K and to provide more funding. Now, the preference is to get away from a grant style pre-K funding and move to pre-K in the standard school funding formula. The basic allotment, I believe, is what it would be called. So that would be our preference, but we want to push for whatever we can get. quite frankly. We are that convinced pre-K is that important to the education of our children in the district. Lastly, on finance, we have to ensure adequate funding for high-quality implementation of HB 5. Okay, so it's the classic unfunded mandate, all right? They pass HB 5, they say, hey, you need to do this, this, and this. We need to improve our education of our kids. They need to test better. We need to test them more, whatever, all right? We're fine with that. We have great administrators. Better yet, we have fantastic teachers. Give them the resources and they will perform the miracles. They've met every test the legislature has thrown at them. But you gotta give them the resources. And so we're going to ask, again, our state legislators and the state legislature to, come on, guys. You want to make education second to none in the state of Texas? Then put your money where your mouth is. Help us out. Let's get this moving. Let's provide quality education for all the kids. So that's the school finance priorities. I think Alan would have done a much better job than I did, but we will move on to assessment and accountability. And Allison, you have the stage.
Thank you. As I was introduced, I'm Allison James, and I have two boys in the district. One's at Moore Elementary and one's at Cy Creek. And my husband and I have several businesses in the area, so I'm just pleased to be part of a committee that has such a positive impact. So thanks for having me today. So we talked about accountability and assessment as the focus of our subcommittee. First of all, we propose that we need to align our state and federal assessment and accountability systems. Multiple systems for our campuses to have to follow are very confusing. We want them to have one set of priorities they can really focus on and be successful in achieving. So that's an important factor. Multiple different systems to administer also result in additional cost, which we just talked about. We don't have a lot of that to spare, so it's not if it's not adding value, we feel that we should streamline and move towards simplicity and greater focus. And in particular, one of the items that is of key concern is eliminating assessments that aren't required by federal law. Specifically the writing and the social studies assessment. I think there's been a lot of discussion on high stakes testing and the effect that has on our kids, and we feel like there's a better opportunity for districts to oversee those factors and not to have additional assessments that are required at a state level. So that's our first item. The second item is we propose that we continue using the school accountability ratings: exemplary, recognized, acceptable, and unacceptable, and not move towards a system that uses an A through F rating system. And there are several reasons for that. First of all, there are a number of other organizations that use an A through F system. So we feel that it would be confusing for us to use a system that is A through F, and for our community and our parents to then see potentially different ratings from these different organizations on this grading scale. In addition, really this can convey a negative connotation for schools that may be investing in their efforts and improving. Saying that a school is acceptable is a little bit different than giving it a C. So we feel that we don't have an opportunity to really reflect the performance improvement that many of our schools are undertaking and the trajectory that they might be on. And it is important to motivate the schools and to attract great teachers and to attract engaged families to these schools. So we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to provide additional detail to them in giving them information about their schools and what performance that they have. And then our parents and our community are very familiar with the exemplary, recognized, acceptable, and unacceptable ratings. And we feel like those are ratings that they're comfortable with, that they understand, that don't create a lot of uncertainty and questions. And they're actually used in the community and student engagement system. So we feel like these ratings really reflect good differentiation within our schools and would continue to serve us really well. So we would propose that we continue to use those going forward. And then last but not least, we feel that it's important to provide multiple pathways for our students to graduate and demonstrate college and career readiness. We currently have in place provision, Senate Bill 149, as a safeguard against relying entirely on, high stakes testing with our students and allowing additional avenues for them to move forward in life and pursue their goals. And that's not to say students don't have high levels of performance they have to achieve. They do still have to complete graduation requirements in all of their courses. And there are graduation committees that were established to review their case and determine if they have met all the necessary conditions in order to move forward into college readiness or the workforce or whatever their destination may be. And so we're proposing that we continue that provision and that we give students that opportunity continuing into the future. That is set to end at the end of the 16-17 year. And that concludes our recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Julie Heineman. I have 2 children in the district, one a 7th grader at Spillane Middle School and a 9th grader at Cy Woods High School. So, school choice. We have 2 priorities under this category. First is to support school choice that ensures uniform standards and requirements for all school systems receiving state funds. So you've heard the phrase, let the money follow the child. Well, if that's true, then we are suggesting that also the rules and requirements associated with the money should also follow. This would allow us to highlight how public ISDs are expected to operate and what they're required to provide. Financial accountability to taxpayers, state-mandated student assessments, teacher certification requirements, transportation, free or reduced meals, bilingual and ESL services, and much more. If an organization receives state funds, they should also be expected to meet these same requirements. We also use this opportunity to highlight the consequences, the inefficiencies, and the redundancies of funding and managing multiple parallel school systems. The state legislature is constitutionally required to provide one school system, and that is a public education to Texas children. We can also use this legislative priority to share data showing how Texas public ed students outperform their peers at charter schools on testing and graduation rates, and that public schools support and reflect the diversity of their communities. School systems receiving state funds should not use punitive measures to restrict their enrollment, such as student and/or parental contracts, minimum test scores and requirements, and financial constraints. Public schools serve all students. School choice should not mean that schools choose which students they want to educate. The second priority in this category is that we oppose legislation that diverts funding from public schools. Here we want to explain the different mechanisms that may be proposed for redirecting or misdirecting public school funding to private organizations. Traditional vouchers, tax credit scholarship programs, education savings accounts, parental empowerment accounts. We want to explain what each of those mean. Despite the creative marketing terminology, there are fundamental errors in the logic behind each of these mechanisms. The money that a parent may receive to utilize at a private school does not reflect the actual amount paid in taxes, but instead would be more. For example, as a parent of 2 children, if I allow the state to open up a special bank account for me or to send funds to an organization on my behalf, I could in fact be receiving 4 times the amount I put into the system through the taxes I paid. So questions come up. How does that impact our neighborhood schools if we're pulling that much money out of those schools? How are those state funds tracked? Do parents turn in receipts? How are parents expected to demonstrate financial justification for those expenditures? What financial transparencies will be required of those for-profit organizations with paid leadership? What is the accountability to taxpayers from the appointed boards who may not even reside in the local community? We can demonstrate that these mechanisms do not help economically disadvantaged students and families, as some have proposed, but instead provide a subsidy for private education to those families who can already afford it. Thank you.
golly, man, they're so good, aren't they? They work so hard. Committee is fantastic. Transparency priorities, look, the beauty of this school district is the transparency that it provides to the taxpayers of Cyfair Independent School District. It is a marked difference between this institution and a private charter school, a private school, etc. We do not oppose transparency. This district has demonstrated forever since I've been involved that it believes in transparency. It believes that the members of this community should know what's going on in the school. But you can go too far. And that's, with regard to transparency, our position is, for goodness sakes, enough is enough. When you're asking a school district to assemble information, that costs money. That takes money out of the classroom where it needs to be to educate kids. We have all the transparency anybody could ever want right now. Nobody can identify to me a problem with regard to disclosure of finances, et cetera, in our school district that somehow requires more reporting. So we want to make sure that when we talk to our legislators, don't create more administrative costs that are totally unnecessary. Keep the money in the classrooms. Don't worry. We're going to make sure our community is informed as to what's going on. The last point, and I'm going to move on to the very last point, really delves into the school choice. It's the same thing. Look, if you're going to provide taxpayer money to a private school, or you're going to provide it to a public charter, or anyone else that is supposed to do the job to educate all children, then they need to comply with the same transparency and accountability requirements that our school district does, because my taxpayer, I want to know how you're using my taxpayer dollars to educate kids. And I want to know that you're educating all kids, that you're not cherry picking your children, and that you're making educational services available to all kids in all communities with all levels of talent and or disabilities, potentially. So that's our third transparency priority. And so I believe you all have a copy of all of the legislative priorities, and so I will not take up any more of your time. We would submit these to you, and then I would ask if you all have any questions that either I can answer or any of the members here can answer.
Perfect. Thank you for that report. We really appreciate it. I hope that you guys understand how much we appreciate the time and energy that you put into this process, because we know it's a monthly meeting and that you have to absorb a lot of information and that you have to work hard to come up with these. And we appreciate that very much. And I hope you'll go back and tell your whole committee that, because it is a daunting job and you guys do a great job with it.
Thank you very much. And again, I cannot express enough thanks to Dr. Henry and his staff, because we have lots of questions. And you know what? They have the answers, which is very cool.
Which is wonderful. All right, do we have any questions? Anyone? Mr. Jackson?
First, let me say, I have stood where y'all stand, and trust me, y'all did a much better job than I ever did. Secondly, I value so much what you do that over the past 5 years, I have attended approximately 90% of your meetings. It is my only way of saying thank you for what you do. However, anybody who comes and speaks before the dais always gets questions. First, do you have a plan of dissemination? And do you have a target audience?
Well, Mr. Jackson, the priorities, if they are approved, assuming they're approved on Monday by this board, will be published on the Cyfair website. And then it is incumbent at our next meeting, we will ask members of our committee, because one of our duties, one of the 3 duties, is to inform the community of what's going on. And so we have our own contacts and sphere of influence, and believe you me, the people on my email address list, they certainly get lots of information from me, and we'll ask the members of our committee to distribute the list, and then there may be some discussion about some other ways we distribute this information. We will for sure send our legislative priorities to each one of the members of our legislative delegation, and we will attempt to meet and discuss these with each one of them. I think you saw a picture where we've already had Senator Betancourt in to discuss matters. I believe that Representative Schofield will be at our next meeting. He could not attend the last one. And we want to engage in a positive manner with all of our legislative delegation. We have the honor of having Patricia Harless, and Teresa is Representative Harless, is she an official member of the CLC? She is an unbelievable resource, and she will help us contact the right legislators to discuss our issues. And so I feel very comfortable about our plan to communicate with not only our legislators, but with our community. Did I answer your question?
You did, thank you. A couple of quick follow-up questions on pre-K. I believe you're espousing that at a minimum, the grant for funding full-day pre-K, or at least providing additional dollars in that regard, should be continued or folded into the funding formula. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, that would, any increase. We'll take more money for half-day pre-K. It's just as long as it's quality pre-K based upon successful programs. You don't want to just throw money at something. You want to make sure you're investing the money into quality education. We're going to support that. The home run would be to move it from a grant program and get it into the regular allotment. Stuart, am I using the program? There you go.
Last year, you espoused a number of points to assist districts that could be categorized as being fast growth as one of your priorities, and I know some thought that perhaps that was, the language was a bit too complex or complicated. I do not see as one of your priorities a focus on fast growth school districts. Is it within one of your priorities, or is that better left to others to handle?
You're killing me here. I wish Alan was up here. No, these are good questions. If we get a simplified, equitable funding formula for public schools in the state of Texas, that could very well take care of our fast growth problem. In other words, if what I would envision is a formula where we're getting hundreds of dollars more per student than we've been getting, then that certainly would assist us in closing the gap for having to deal with our increased enrollment. we're not saying no to funding for fast growth schools, and if they want to propose programs that will assist us on our bond, on paying back bonds, et cetera, which are specifically tied to growth, then we're going to support those programs. But really, it's kind of folded into the current priorities that we have.
Let me just add to that as well, if I could, Tom. Of course, we as a district are members of the Fast Growth School Coalition, and I actually serve on the steering committee for that group. And we feel that all of the fast growth issues is best handled by that coalition, which is a very formidable group, as a matter of fact. And we have already, I'd set up a meeting, and Teresa and I and some of the other fast growth districts met with Senator Betancourt a month or so ago regarding fast growth issues as well as Cy-Fair issues as a fast growth district. And so we will continue to work with our legislators across the state, not just in our own delegation, but legislators across the state on fast growth issues. And I will be very much involved in that and working with that group in describing the issues that are related to fast growth districts and specifically for Cy-Fair.
If there's a specific piece of legislation comes up, Stuart's going to let us know, and mark my words, it's going to fall within our priorities, and we're going to push that with our legislators.
Thank you for a very, very good and thorough presentation.
Thank you again. We really appreciate your time. I think perhaps we should leave this for Monday night to vote on, since we do have 3 people that are not here tonight. Our next one, item number 6B, the board will consider adopting a resolution acknowledging October as School Priority Month. Again, we're going to have a very brief presentation on Monday, so I don't think we should move that to consensus. 6C, the board will consider approving and submitting to the Commissioner of Education a request for maximum class size waiver. Anyone have any questions on this item for Ms. Stewart? Mr. Jackson?
Dr. Stewart, very, very quickly. In the past, we were given a schedule that had a little more detailed information. Will that be forthcoming?
Yes, I will. I'll submit that to you in your Friday packet. I apologize that it's not there, but
Thank
we'll
you.
get that to you.
Well, it's very difficult to get all this information together. Secondly, we have 36 waiver requests, I believe.
That's correct.
How does that compare to last year or the year before?
Last year, for the 15-16 school year, we had 19 campuses that we requested waivers for. This year, we have 36 campuses. But out of those 36 campuses, 20 of those campuses could have balanced those classes where all of the classes were at 22 or below. For a variety of reasons, they've opted not to. For instance, you could have a class with 24 students and 2 classes with 20 students. They could have removed 2 students from the 24 and balanced the classes of 20 and 20 and made them 21. But then they have to decide at this late date, which 2 students should I move? So for a variety of reasons, in 20 of those campuses, some of those classes are unbalanced, are not at 22 or below. So our average for this year is truly 16. And so last year, we had 19, 2014, 15, 16, and so it'd be 16, 19, and 16.
Well, then that tells me we are exactly where we need to be, but I appreciate that explanation because class size waivers often show up in the newspaper. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Does the board feel like that could be moved to consensus? Mr. Jackson does not? All right, we'll leave that off of consensus then. That brings us to 6D. The board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. 1, contracted educational services and professional development services. 2, cosmetology, equipment and supplies. 3, grease trap, sand oil, solids inceptor, line cleaning. 4, metal detection equipment for food service. 5, print cartridges, OEM, remanufactured or compatible. 6, video security system upgrade. And I believe that's the last of those. Any questions on those items? Any questions? Can that be moved to consensus? All right, we'll move that to consensus. Thank you. 6E, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, CLE local building grounds and equipment management flag displays. 2, DNB local performance appraisal, evaluation of other professional employees revision. Those are our only 2 on that. Any questions on that? Seeing none, can that move to consensus? All right, that brings us down to F. The board will consider approving on second reading additions or revisions or deletions to district policies. 1, BBG local board members compensation and expenses. And I will once again say, as I did last month, we are not salaried. We receive no funds for that. That's just talking about our travel expenses and how they're reimbursed. BJ CF local superintendent non-renewal. 3, BQ local planning and decision-making process revision. 4, CLB local buildings, grounds, and equipment management maintenance revision. 5, DEC local compensation and benefits leaves and absences revision. EFD local instructional resources field trips revision. 7, EHBAF local special education video audio monitoring revision. FEB local attendance accounting revision. 9, FFC local student welfare student support services deletion. 10, FFH local student welfare freedom from discrimination, harassment, and retaliation revision. 11, FL local student records revision. 12, FM local student activities revision. 13, FMG local student activities travel revision. Any questions on those items? Seeing none, can we move that to consensus? Okay, we'll move that to consensus. G, the board will consider approving the CenterPoint Energy Houston Electric LLC blanket utility easement to provide electrical service for Bain Elementary. Any need for a closed session on this? Any questions on this? Seeing none, can we move this to consensus? H, the board will review and consider adoption of revised board operating guidelines outlining the duties of a public officer. Any need for a closed session on this? Any questions on this? We've all had these copies of these for quite a while. Would we like to not put that on consensus so the other 3 board members have an opportunity to make comments on that? All right. I, the board will consider approval of the contract of employment for the superintendent as discussed in closed session. We are going to handle that on Monday.
That's what I was going to recommend, Madam President.
Yeah, we do have a few board members that were just unable to make tonight's session. So we'll discuss that in closed session on Monday. That brings us to the end of tonight's agenda. Dr. Ogletree, you have something?
Just a clarification, and Marnie, once we put stuff on consensus, we could on Monday, if we want to, pull something, couldn't we?
Absolutely. The concept of consensus is just that there are no further questions. That's why we actually have a workshop, so that you can ask those. But at any time, if you put something on consensus, according to your board operating procedures, which you're adopting an updated version, any board member can remove that from consensus. Dr. O, you're right.
And I really typically, and I think all of us that have conducted the meetings do make that option available. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda for tonight, and we will look forward to seeing everyone on Monday night for our official meeting. And thank you very much, and have safe travels home.